If you had asked me as a child who my favorite person in the world was, I wouldn't have blinked. My dad. Simple, certain like breathing. He was the kind of man who never yelled, never hit, never slammed doors. He brought home chocolate bars when I was sad, fixed broken toys before I even noticed they were damaged, and always asked if we were okay, even if he was clearly not. When other kids said they were scared of their fathers, I couldn't relate. Mine smiled too easily, listened too patiently. He knew how to make tea the way I liked it. He bought me books before I even knew I wanted to read. I watched him closely. I memorized the way he tied his shoes, the way he walked with his hands in his pockets, the way he laughed with one eye squinting tighter than the other. I told myself, I want to marry someone like him, not just because he was kind, but because he made me feel like I mattered, like I was special. But as I got older, the man I worshipped began to blur. It didn't happen all at once. It started with small things. A joke that stung. A comparison that left me silent. A moment where he was too busy to listen. He still bought me things, still smiled, still told others he loved me more than anything. But sometimes, just sometimes, he'd say something I couldn't believe came from him. You're not as interesting as your siblings. You don't really get jokes, do you? You're too sensitive, Ariba. He always laughed afterward. I did too. But deep inside, the girl who wanted to be just like him started to ask a dangerous question. What if he isn't who I thought he was? And once you start asking that, it's hard to stop. Some words bounce off your skin. Others find a way in sharp, quiet, unforgettable. I was 12, the first time my father told me I wasn't funny. We were sitting with my siblings, and I had tried to tell a joke. He laughed but not at the joke. At me. You really don't have a sense of humor, do you? Everyone laughed with him, so I did too. But when I went to bed that night, I replayed it in my head, again and again, like a bruise that didn't show on the outside, but throbbed every time I touched it with memory. He said it again a few weeks later, this time in front of guests. She's the serious one, doesn't know how to take a joke. It wasn't meant to hurt, but it did. Because I was trying, I wanted him to see me, to think I was fun, to light up around me like he did around my brother. But I always got the dim version of him. Once, he told me he preferred their company. They're easier to talk to, he said, then quickly added, but you know, I don't mean it that way. Maybe he didn't. But words, once said, don't vanish just because you wish them away. They echo, they cling. I began shrinking in his presence, without realizing. Speaking less, watching more, waiting for him to notice. He didn't. He still called me Beta, still asked if I wanted anything when he went out. But he never asked how I felt, never apologized for the weight of his words. And I never told him they were still there, lodged inside me like splinters I couldn't pull out. The day I got my test results, I walked through the house like I was floating. Top of the class. Highest score in the subject I'd struggled with for months. My name circled in red at the top. For once, I didn't doubt if I was smart enough. I had proof now, and all I wanted was to show him. I found him in the living room, scrolling through his phone. Abba, look, I said, holding out the paper with both hands, heart pounding with pride. He glanced at it, nodded. Good job. I waited for more, maybe a smile, a mashallah, even a pat on the head like when I was younger. But he looked back at his screen. His fingers were already typing something. He chuckled at whatever he saw, and answered a call without looking up again. I stood there, my paper still in the air. 10 minutes later he was gone, out with his friends. That night, I put the test paper in my drawer. No celebration, no I'm proud of you, no story shared at dinner. It wasn't about the praise. It was about the moment. I wanted him to see me, but he didn't. When I told my mom about it, she just smiled softly and said, that's just how he is, Beta. You know he cares, he's just distracted. Distracted. That word made me want to scream. Because he was never distracted, when my siblings showed him something, he always had time to clap for them, to post them, to hug them. But me, I was a quick nod, a forgotten page. And no matter how high I scored, I never felt like I passed with him. We had guests over that evening, uncles, cousins, neighbors, the usual crowd that filled the house with noise and fake laughter. My siblings were in the center, chatting, laughing, alive. I sat on the edge of the couch, smiling when expected, quiet, observing. That's when he did it. This one, he said, pointing at my younger brother with a smirk. He's so lazy, if motivation were money, he'd be broke. Laughter filled the room. My brother laughed too. But I saw it, that small flicker of embarrassment. Then he pointed at me. And Ariba here, always so serious. Like she's carrying the weight of the world. Smile, beta, you'll crack your face. Everyone laughed harder. I laughed too. Because that's what you do when you're called out in front of a crowd. You join the joke before it crushes you. Later, when the room was quieter, I asked him softly, "Why do you say things like that about us? In front of people?" He waved it off. "Relax, Yar, it's just fun, don't be so sensitive." That word again. Sensitive, like it was a flaw. Like feeling was a weakness I needed to unlearn. I didn't argue, I just nodded and disappeared upstairs. In my room, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced smiling. Not because I wanted to. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I could become the version of me he wanted, the easy, funny, always happy girl, he'd stop turning me into a punchline. But no matter how long I smiled at myself, it never felt like mine. My mother wasn't the warm kind of soft. She wasn't the hugs and cookies type. She was quiet, heavy with silence. Always doing something, folding clothes, wiping tables that were already clean, standing at the sink long after the dishes were done. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it never reached her eyes. Growing up, I didn't understand her distance. I thought maybe she didn't like us much. She was always tense, always tired. But as I got older, I started to see it. She wasn't cold. She was carrying something. Someone else's weight. In Desi culture, the mother gets the blame. Always. Kids misbehave, her fault. Grades drop, her fault. If the house isn't perfect or the children aren't perfect, then clearly she failed. My father never said that directly. He even told us once, "Don't blame your mother, she works hard." But when his sisters criticized her, when Daddy said, "She's spoiled you all and made you weak," he stayed silent. He didn't agree. But he didn't defend her either. That silence became a language of its own. My mother started shutting down even more. She stopped waiting to be protected. Started expecting nothing. She still cooked his meals. Still laid out his clothes. But not out of love, out of routine. Out of duty. Out of years of being unchosen in the small moments. Sometimes I caught her looking at him across the table, with an expression I couldn't name, not hate, not love. Something in between. Something like surrender. And I started wondering, if the woman he chose feels that invisible, what chance did I ever have? It was an old conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. My aunt, my mom's sister, was over. I passed by the kitchen slowly, just close enough to catch it. "He used to check on me when I had nothing," she said. "Took me grocery shopping, helped with my electricity bill. You never even knew, did you?" My mom didn't respond right away. Then came her voice, flat but sharp. "I knew, I just didn't want to fight." That moment rewrote so many things in my head. It happened years ago, they said. He only did it because my aunt was struggling, they said. It was the right thing, they said. But I saw it in my mother's silence that day, how it still burned. Because it wasn't just what he did. It was that he didn't tell her. Didn't ask. Didn't think about how it would look or feel. That he was helping someone she barely spoke to. Someone who used to mock her. He didn't cheat, he didn't lie. But he betrayed something she never spoke about, her dignity. Later, when I brought it up gently, just to understand, he waved it off. "Your Kala was in a bad place. I did what was right. Your mother always thinks too emotionally." There it was again, the minimizing. The explanation without apology. He was always doing the right thing, even if it left the people closest to him quietly bleeding. And I wondered, if love doesn't consider the wounds it leaves behind, is it still love? Or just a performance of it? It was a typical afternoon visit. My grandmother sat in her favorite corner of the living room, wrapped in her cream shawl, sipping chai, with my father beside her. His phone was in his lap for once. My mother served snacks in silence. I knew something was coming. You can feel it when words begin curling in the air before they're even spoken. "The children are getting out of hand," Grandma said casually. "Your wife has spoiled them. There's no discipline in this house." My mother didn't flinch. She just placed the tray down and walked back into the kitchen like she hadn't heard. I looked at my father, waiting. Surely he'd say something. This was the moment, small but important. A chance to stand beside her. He exhaled through his nose, rubbed his forehead, then said, "Amy, it's not just her. Things are different now." That was it. No defense, no correction, no, she's done her best. Just a mild deflection, and a retreat back into silence. And I realized then, he only fought for her when it was convenient. He had the words, but never when it mattered. After my grandmother left, I asked him why he didn't say anything. "Why always make things worse?" he said. "You think I don't know how hard your mother works. But there's no point fighting with Amy. She won't change." But that wasn't the point. The point was, even if Grandma wouldn't change, he could have chosen her side. loudly, clearly, in front of us. But instead, he stayed still. And that silence, again, became the only thing we heard. When I was little, I followed my father like a shadow. If he sat on the couch, I curled up beside him. If he laughed at something, I laughed too, even if I didn't get the joke. I copied his handwriting, the way he stacked his shoes, even the way he held a teacup. Once I stood in front of the mirror and tried to say him the way he did, calm, thoughtful, like he was too wise to answer immediately. I practiced for days. Because back then, I didn't just love him. I wanted to be him. But now, I don't know who that man is anymore. He still smiles at the world, still helps neighbors, still opens doors for strangers and insists we call and check on relatives we barely know. But at home, he disappears. He drifts through conversations. He gives more attention to group chats than to my voice. He calls family time, but spends it on his phone. He talks about unity, about respect, about values, and then says things like, Ariba just doesn't get social stuff. She's more serious. Or worse, you used to be sweet, what happened? He says it with a smile, like he's teasing. But it doesn't feel like teasing. It feels like shrinking. I've stopped trying to be like him. Not out of bitterness, not even anger, but because I've learned that sometimes, even the people we place on pedestals will disappoint us. And pretending they're perfect only makes the fall harder. So now, I try to be like someone else. Someone I haven't fully met yet. He always told us to spend more time together. We don't hang out enough as a family, he'd say. So we'd plan movie nights, game nights, short drives to the ice cream place we all liked. My siblings and I would gather. My mom would cut up fruit and we'd wait. And wait. Most times he never came. Or came halfway through and sat on his phone, chuckling at messages from his friends, or watching cricket highlights on mute. You all start without me, he'd say. I'm just wrapping up something. But something was always wrapping up. Something was always louder than us. I once asked him to play a board game with me. He smiled, said he would after dinner. After dinner, he said maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow turned into never. One evening, I finally asked him directly, why don't you spend time with me the way you say you want to? He looked up from his phone. You're always in your room, he said. You're hard to connect with sometimes. And I almost laughed. Because I had been standing in doorways, waiting at tables, sitting beside him for years, hoping he'd turn to me. But I was invisible behind the glass of his distractions. He told me once, after a long silence between us, I love all of you equally, but your siblings are easier to talk to. He said it gently, almost like it was a compliment to them. But to me, it was another cut dressed as honesty. And deep down, I started to believe maybe love did have a ranking. And I was no longer at the top. Despite everything, I still love him. I don't know how not to. Even with all the small disappointments. The words that stayed longer than they should have. The moments I felt invisible, I still love him. Because he was my first comfort. My first safe place. The first hand I held when I was scared of the world. But maybe love isn't always enough to keep someone on a pedestal. Maybe love, in its truest form, means seeing someone fully, flaws, blind spots, silences, and choosing to love them anyway. From a distance, if needed. I don't expect apologies anymore. I don't wait for perfect moments. I've stopped running after his attention with test scores and quiet smiles. Now I sit with the truth. He is a good man. But even good men can be careless. Even good fathers can break your heart in quiet, unintentional ways. Sometimes he still calls me into the room and asks me to sit with him while he scrolls on his phone. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I no longer chase his approval. Not because I've stopped caring, but because I'm learning that my worth isn't built from his words or withheld affection. I'm still healing, still softening toward myself, still figuring out how to be the girl who once wanted to be just like him, and the woman who no longer needs to be. And maybe one day, he'll see all the versions of me he missed while looking elsewhere. But even if he doesn't, I still love him, just not blindly anymore. Please like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories.